And now we get to the crust of the matter.
And though many of these white male peers were liberal in the beginning of the 2010s and liked Stephen Colbert and were pro-Obama, these same people ended up voting for Trump in 2016. Though, of course, this isn't true of all white cis het male fans. Some are secure and self-aware enough to see through conservative dog whistles.
So basically, if you don't believe what she believes and vote the way she votes, then you're a bad person and you're on the opposite side. She can't see how she actually is part of the reason why these people who are actually radicalized, the ones that are, I mean, she literally said that these people all voted for Trump, and I guess she's just saying that you're alt-right if you're Trump, which is not the case. People could vote for Trump for a number of reasons. They could see how most poor people can't really afford to get complete new skills and compete with all the unskilled labor that's going to come to the country. They might be, want less taxes. There's lots of reasons that they might actually decide that they want to vote for him versus, say, Hillary. I mean, maybe they're anti-war. I mean, she's a hawk. That's kind of how that works. So obviously, she's just been radicalized. And that pretty well covers my review there. She doesn't really see how she's radicalized, but she sees how other people get radicalized. And that's kind of the problem, not just of her and not just the people on the far right, but society as a whole, is it's been polarized and through these echo chambers, and people have been radicalized, and it's all really just manipulation by the people who have the most to keep us and them apart. Because I've been around, I've walked on about 6,000 doors last fall, and I can tell you, most people aren't that crazy. Well, this has been the Springfield Cynic, and have a good day. But hopefully she'll be about done now.
Now I ask this question. Were fandom spaces always filled with white men just waiting to be radicalized? Or did the mainstreaming of geek culture and the resulting critiques of said media make them this way?
Eric Hoffman has actually a good book on that one called The True Believer. And so, according to that, yes, the answer would be yes. And that applies to all social movements. Anyone who's considered on the margins, any of the misfits, or the people who feel like they should have gotten better, they're primed to be radicalized, as this young lady obviously has herself. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. And I actually recommend that book to anybody who was interested in such things.
To the effect of, they should just hire the best people for the job, which ironically never happens to be people of color, LGBTQ plus people, or disabled people.
Well, hold on here. Isn't that what happened with The Matrix? I mean, weren't they LGBT plus or whatever? They're trannies. I mean, that's what happened. Granted, I don't think they announced that till after they made at least the first film, or was it the last film? I don't know. I don't pay attention to celebrities. Point being is that they do have plenty of times to hire people, and that's really, as far as the woke Hollywood, that's really part of that whole deal, is that they really don't buy into the woke ideology. They just pretend to, which is why they make crappy films, and the reason why they didn't do it a long time ago. If you think about a lot of the things that in the media is considered racist, I mean, that's the worst offenders are the people who are now saying that they want to be all woke. And a lot of this, if you actually watch on your own social media, look at people from high school or wherever, the people that are the biggest woke people are the people that were the most bigoted people that could possibly exist back in the day.
Manufacturing these rifts within fandom spaces, they can see who can be radicalized, and unfortunately it's usually cishet white men who have the most to gain from right-wing politics.
And ergo, the reason why they have the margins is the left-wing politics is geared toward those people that feel marginalized for one reason or another. The whole idea with the ideology or the words are to make them feel even more marginalized, so they feel like they are one with the overall project. I mean, is it any wonder why feminism's now decided that Islam is one of the big things? I mean, they never heard of a Sudanese female circumcision where they take a bush and cut everything out. I mean, it's pretty nasty, but hey, that's their culture. They respect women. I mean, come on, really? And now she has something kind of interesting to say.
But also grifters and gurus who say that they have the answer as to why you're so unhappy as a dorky cishet white guy, and it's not toxic masculinity, it's immigrants, women, and Jewish people. Lastly, Ian Danskin's How to Radicalize a Normie video points out how members of hate groups infiltrate fandom spaces filled with nerds and geeks in order to sow discord.
And this is what I'm going to try to say here, is it's not just white supremacists that would do this. It's largely these people that are in intersectionality. They know you're on the margins, and they use your marginalization or your being on the margins to channel you into a group saying we all should unite and fight whoever we see that's on top, at least in our imagination, because obviously not everybody is, in this case, a Zuckerberg or a Elon or any other people there.
Do this by making an off-color joke and waiting to see who laughs, or by complaining about how bad the franchise they enjoy has become and how it was so much better back then,
and that's where you get into the advertisements and all that, and the people who, you can make a white person joke or, a man joke or something and be hateful to no end. But the people that are real responsive to that, they either go along and don't think of themselves, or they're likely to be, part of your movement. And that's how they go about doing things.
That's how the alt-right ensnares you, and how conspiracy theories work. They make you think that you're in on a secret, that you have the answers, when in fact you're someone else's puppet.
Yep.
And it's honestly really scary how just having open conversations about problems and works liked by nerdy white men radicalized so many of them. And they weren't just radicalized by machine learning algorithms, but also grifters and gurus who say that they have the answer as to why you're so unhappy as a dorky cishet white guy, and it's not toxic masculinity, it's immigrants, women, and Jewish people.
And here we go. Exactly. Projection at its finest. It's all about your classification, and it's not really about your social awkwardness or anything else. And like I said, that goes both ways. You're being manipulated, and this is just one more tool that people that can manipulate with. I mean, they use the internet because that's the game of the day. And unfortunately for this young lady, she's fallen hook, line, and sinker to it. She's just on one side, whereas there's another side as well. Although I dare say that her side has way more people involved, and ergo makes it a whole lot more dangerous. And once again, here she is.
At the periphery, at the tip of the iceberg, that all of this hateful rhetoric isn't hateful at all, that there's still more to discover, and that in the grand scheme of things, this is all a perfectly normal way of seeing the world.
And that's where she gets you, because quite frankly, that's exactly what her ideology is. It's hateful and it's divisive, while pretending to be just the opposite. It's actually interesting the acrobatics that goes on here. I mean, obviously, white supremacy is hateful and divisive, but this particular type of ideology is really just the same thing, just tooled in a reverse psychology. To give you an example, I remember having a feminist professor tell me about how all the advertisements in women's magazines had phallic symbols for their shampoo, and how that was somehow men oppressing them, as if they weren't the ones deciding to buy or not buy based on the advertisements they've seen. But I digress. And now she's going to act like somehow the fourth wave feminists weren't as crazy, but by talking about things that don't matter, and most people would realize don't matter, and then glossing over the ideas that supposedly should matter without actually articulating what those are.
Disney princesses, don't these people have lives, you think? This
Pretty well.
pop feminism only serves to push you further right. And again, confirm your bias that these angry women have nothing better to do. Instead of watching Anita Sarkeesian's videos, you watch people debunking them.
Which is actually kind of funny, because Anita recently had an interview where she said that diversity, equity, and inclusion didn't actually do what it's supposed to do, because it was just a tool for corporate interest, which that's kind of what I was saying before. It's all just a game to the people at play.
You get is that she just wants to ruin things, when of course that wasn't the...
That's actually kind of how it plays out, whether that's what the intention was or not. That being said, yeah, I mean, people are getting played by the people with the money and the access on the very top, and they're getting played on emotional issues, and both people are getting channeled.
For project, but that's what's being sold to you. And you choose not to listen to her actual thoughts, because the algorithm and your human brain work together to keep you in your comfort zone, to keep you safe. to keep you from thinking too hard.
And that sounds like what exactly happened to her. And that's the reason why every time she says something in the video, rather than explaining what it really is, she just uses these terms that she learned in college that were left-wing without actually thinking about what they really mean. I mean, she constantly talks about oppression, but doesn't really even talk about how people are oppressed. She talks about privilege, doesn't explain what that privilege is. She talks about, all kinds of things here that you really, it's like, okay, really, I mean, how is this oppressive? How is this actually marginalizing you? How is the recreation and reimagining even something that you'd want to do when you want to actually have an authentic voice? If you take female Ghostbusters and put them in as carbon copy / changing positions with the male ones in a Ghostbusters film, are those uniquely female, or are they just, guys with female names?
And then, after watching some very angry videos about Sarkeesian, you start to get offered anti-Semitic videos, and then videos about natural selection. And the deeper you go, the more isolated you become from the media and the fellow fans that made you so angry in the first place.
Not sure exactly where she was going with that. It would appear, though, that she's more or less just joined the bandwagon of what's the end thing is at this particular point in time. I'm not sure if she's been any real critical thinking, or if she just kind of goes along with what she hears in her latest gender studies class. Now, as far as some of the things that were stupid about the first film, like that maneuver with ramming, which really didn't make sense because otherwise why they didn't do it beforehand, I think that the more of the backlash of what their criticisms were was probably the fuel. Though, once again, I wasn't a 4chan person or, really paid too much mind as far as what the criticisms were overall at that point. But let's continue.
Because you see yourself as a rational centrist. But soon, those same people start to debunk feminism. And this content is the stuff that finally makes you feel seen. And your bias is continually confirmed, as a lot of the feminism you're seeing online is extremely cringe. Mainly BuzzFeed talking about manspreading and how Disney princesses are problematic.
Well, and that's kind of where she found herself being indoctrinated, because she was told a few things about how things didn't work out her way as a female, and ergo everything had to be sexist or racist or what have you. What they're basically doing is exploiting your social awkwardness. And this is whether you're on the right or the left. They're just exploiting your social awkwardness. But back to her program.
So with all that said, let's take a stroll. Let's say you're just a regular cishet white guy on the internet in the 2010s who describes themselves as a nerd. You have geeky interests, you go to conventions, you're a part of various fan forums, and have friends online who share your love of niche subcultures. But that's all that really binds you to these fan groups and friends, your shared love of X, Y, or Z. You don't really talk about your personal life or politics, even though you know a lot of the people in this space.
So right now she's criticizing these men for being men, because that's kind of what men do. But whatever, we'll digress.
Are politically left-leaning. Contrary to them, you think fandom isn't a place for politics, so it's just never come up. And when it has, you just kind of roll your eyes. But now a new movie from a franchise you like has been announced, and there's something different about the cast that makes you feel kind of uncomfortable, as if they're trying to right a past wrong the franchise has done, and therefore that you have done, as you tie so much of your own identity to said media. To cleanse your palate and assure yourself that you in no way could or would ever consume sexist or racist art, you start watching debunking videos on YouTube.
Was that really a thing? I mean, I will admit that I'm a little oblivious. Was there that many people who really thought The Force Awakens was that big a deal? I mean, I remember watching it and I think that was okay. I just want to know where it went to. But, I mean, there were some things that was kind of quirky that have kind of been more or less known, as far as the Rey thing and the fact that Luke was such a big deal, but he didn't show up until the very end. But, I mean, I think most people are willing to not really make that big a deal about it. Though later on, some of the other ones, obviously the Last Jedi in particular, were particularly just, throwing their politics in your face. But there obviously was some issues with the first part there, as far as some of the strategies and some of the other parts. But really, she has kind of a gold mine of stuff. It's actually, I mean, it's really entertaining.
the alt-right, as opportunistic as ever, saw a new recruiting base primed to see their new wave fascist movement as a place of refuge.
So, the feminists cause a problem, and the right wing see that as breeding grounds for recruitment. Now, that's actually, I think, really key there, as I'm sure there were some alt-right nationalists, maybe white nationalists even, that were really saying, hey, see what's going on with your properties, join us, or we're going to have people say stupid things and people kind of chant, because that's kind of what people do when they get into tribes for some reason or other. Anyway, I'm sure they did see that and took advantage of it, but you're not taking any responsibility for that because you don't want to accept the fact that your overzealous criticisms of something had results. That's just kind of how that works. I know that you're going to say you're just blaming the victim, but no, I'm saying if you cry wolf enough, people are going to stop listening, and not only that, they're going to start hating the wolf. But let's continue.
Both directly and indirectly brought angry white men over through creating content on platforms whose addicting algorithms work by suggesting the same content over and over, and by infiltrating online fandom spaces where these types of nerds typically hang out. The pipeline I'm going to describe is basically the pipeline that Ian Danskin from Innuendo Studios illustrated in their video entitled How to Radicalize a Normie, mixed with the pyramid of violence from the Pootie pipeline by non-compete, but I've also added in some of my own details.
And that's actually one of the interesting parts is the more I've looked into modern politics, it kind of reminds me of the term circulation of elites that Pareto came up with which basically means most people are oblivious to what's actually going on, and there's people that talk good trash, the foxes, and there's people who actually own lots of property, the lions, and they just keep trading places, exploiting the weaknesses in one another. Because basically what you have is one echo chamber that makes the most radical leftist ideology what the leftists believe, and then you have one part that does the same thing with the right wing, and ergo they continually fight one another and don't actually affect what the elites are truly doing. But let us have her continue.
Blame the capitalist patriarchy and toxic masculinity, they begin to believe that their oppression stems from the content they enjoy and identify with, and turn themselves into victims. But then this narrative too becomes disrupted when later the same material that they based their identity on became widely loved and accepted, thus making these men even more spiteful.
Now, are they being spiteful because you want to watch their shows, or are they being spiteful because you want to change the shows and the characters that are already there?
Fire then continued to be stoked via the mass onslaught of criticism of said properties due to fourth-wave feminism and online activism.
See, that's really the problem right there. Fourth-wave feminism and activism has attacked their the properties they like, and rather than acting like they're fans of the actual properties, they're really just fans of the fourth-wave feminism and activism. And this is where I probably have to apologize, because she really doesn't go into the actual pipeline until 22 minutes in. And so, ergo, I've wasted a lot of time talking about the other stuff. But she tries to prime you, get you to believe her BS before she goes on to what she's actually saying.
This system is the end result of everything we've been talking about. Firstly, you have some angry cis-het white nerds internalize the late 20th and early 21st century patriarchal male power fantasy of going from lowly nerd to tech millionaire.
So basically, she's assuming that the vast majority of people don't want to get rich, and somehow that is uniquely male. And as far as power fantasies go, it's pretty clear that Captain Marvel and a lot of these undeveloped characters are just that, power fantasies.
They become even angrier when they become disillusioned with that dream, since only a small handful of geeks and nerds ever actually achieved capitalistic success.
And that might be part of the problem as well, is that a lot of these women that are popping up the woke culture were told that if they got that college degree and followed the system, that they'd get all the things that they wanted and be happy. And when they're not happy, then they have to have somebody to blame.
And blame the capitalist patriarchy and toxic masculinity, they begin to believe that their oppression stems from the content they enjoy and identify with, and turn themselves into victims.
That sounds like the feminist right there. I mean, she just said exactly what modern feminism is all about. It's not about having your own checkbook or having your own job. having your own ability to succeed and be an independent person. It's really about your power projection fantasies. And we will continue.
Speaking from experience, I think that there were always people who were more conservative in geeky or nerdy circles that were vulnerable to being radicalized, specifically, of course, white men. For example, I knew a lot of white male students back in my school days who hung out with the social outcasts. The social outcasts being kids of color, LGBTQ+ students, and people who were neurodivergent. These white boys were on the fringes because of their niche interests and for not fitting in and at times rejecting the hegemonic norm. Some were also neurodivergent themselves.
See how she words that? You only be the person who's going to be radical, and it's always going to be on the right that are radical, and it's going to be those white guys. And so she herself doesn't see her own indoctrination. It's really astounding, the lack of insight here. But, she'll figure it out, hopefully, someday.
Or identified as LGBTQ+. But a lot of them were just white boys who had nowhere else to go in the cafeteria. And they happened to like the same stuff we did, but were more likely to maybe push the boundaries with racist jokes, and we kind of just gave them passes for it because, hey, they like the same stuff we do, they can't be all bad. Also, as misfits and bully victims, we were empathetic to people who were also ostracized. But just because you like a certain thing doesn't mean you hold the same beliefs or even view or experience the property the same way and have the same takeaways.
So basically what she's saying is they are bad, I am good, and ergo I can do no wrong, and they're all just these overprivileged people who need to be put in their place.